Hello and welcome to this very exciting video on Reflex, a full stack open source Python framework. So write your code in Python and you will get a React app. That's amazing. And it also uses Chakra UI, which is a very popular React component library. So you will see me using these components in Python, like box, center, badge, flex, image, text, and all that. This is just amazing, this library. Now, you can go to reflex.dev and take a look at the documentation. Very useful. They also have this chatbot, which is just amazing, answers your questions. Okay, now I have created this virtual environment and activated that, and I'm going to start by installing Reflex by pip install Reflex. And so I've installed it. It was very fast. For you, it might take a minute or so. After you've installed it, you need to initialize it by using this command, reflex space init, one word, and that's it. And you will see a whole bunch of folders created. For example, well, this is my virtual environment. This one is where your code is compiled to JavaScript, your Python code. You will see your pages all with JS, like index.js, about.js, whatever. And after that, you will see your assets, that is, your images could be here, your CSS files are here. And then here down below, you have a config file, which is just the name of your app and database. And there, this is your main folder that you will be working with. For me, because this is the same name as my parent directory, they gave it to this directory. And inside that, there's an init file because it's a package, and the same name also has been passed down to my main Python file. That is, for me, it's reflexproj.py. Now, if you go in there, well, you will see this example website, which is like a welcome to Reflex website. I'm going to remove all this later, but before that, in the terminal, you need to run your server. So run the app by this command, reflex space run, and it will create this localhost at 3000 for you, where you can see your app. And the great thing is, as soon as you save your changes here in the main file, like by pressing, for example, Control S, you will see those changes have been applied right there. So there is a fast refresh or hot reloading or whatever you want to call that. You don't need to stop the server, restart it, or refresh the whole page here. That is just amazing. So I am going to use several of the components that Reflex provides, and you will see all these in practice how I'm going to use them. But if you want to know more, please just check their website, reflex.dev, and they have a lot of great stuff right inside the, for example, components. You will see that state, styling, database, hosting, and all that. Okay, now you can see that the app is running perfect. So I'm just going to refresh that for the first time, and it's going to appear, something is going to appear, and this is what appears. So we have this welcome to Reflex. Get it started by this, oops, and check our docs, and you can see there is a nice theme, also switcher as well. All right, so before starting, I'm going to remove everything there is in our main Python file. I'm going to start from scratch by explaining how you can create apps. The first thing you need to do is to import Reflex. We can optionally give it an alias of Rx so that we would refer to it later as Rx. Now, every page inside our app is going to be the result or the return of a function. For example, let's create a function in Python, define def, and call it index, which is going to be our index page, right? The home page, like this. And that is going to return something. Not return, but return something. What is it it's going to return? Well, we are going to return a reflex component that it gets from Chakra called text. And it's just a text like this is home page. That's it. And remember, this text is exactly what Chakra had with uppercase here. So we are just prefixing it with RX and use small, or what do you call it, lowercase letters. So our index page is going to return only this, but it is not yet a page. We haven't registered it anywhere. So first, we are going to create an app, which is going to be an instance of the RX app. So it's going to be an app, and that app is going to have this page added to it. So we would say app.add_page. Which page? Index. What do I mean index? It means, well, this index refers to this function. Whatever it returns will be the content of that page. Great. Now it's time to compile it. So app.compile. So it's going to compile this to JavaScript. Now if I save this, Control S, let's see what happens here. I'm not doing anything but look. This is what I got, just a text. Now I can add some props to this text, and props are properties, basically like attributes you add to your HTML, for example. So a prop could be whatever CSS style you can have. For example, font_size. What is font size for this? I want to have, for example, I don't know, 20 pixels. Let's save it, Control S, and you will see this will be, see, a bit bigger. I can have color, and the color is going to be green, for example. Let's save this again and check, it's green. I can have a background of blue, BG equals blue. You can also have background underscore color. You can see that. What else? I can have it as bold, I think, as bold, yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if that is how it was used, but let's see. No, this is not how it is. Okay, no, yeah, this is, I think I remembered. As B, like that, and it should be bold. Oh yeah, now it is bold. So you can say I will be italic and all that. So as underscore. What about hover effects? I can have underscore hover equals, and for hover effect you need to have a dictionary because you can have several things. For example, upon hover, I'm going to change the color to white. Oops. I need to have like that. Or upon hover, I'm going to change the background to some, what am I doing? The background BG to, I don't know, black, for example. Let's save that one and let's go over it. Just look, this is so cool. Okay, so this is basically how you can use props, that is these attributes, to change styling. Okay, so now we have seen this text component. But this is not why Reflex came to be. You know, imagine if I had a lot of stuff on this page, am I going to include them all under this function? What about another page, like an about page, which I'm going to create now? Define an about page, which is going to return something. Let's just call it, again, this one was also a text, which is about page, like that. Now let's add that page, which is this function. But this time maybe I don't want it to be /about. I want it to be /about page, for example. So I can specify a custom route by using this about page. So if someone goes to about page, let's see it like that, return this. I'm going to save that, and let's go here, about. So if I go to about, you see nothing happens. But if I say about page, look, about page is returned. You see, because I specified it here. If I had left this out, if someone went to about, /about, that would be it. Okay, let's go back to our home page. Now, I want to have several stuff here inside the home page, but I don't want to write everything in one file. I want to break it down to components. What are components? Well, components are things like, for example, this piece. Components are basically blocks or pieces of code that you write for some purpose. For example, a card can be a component. So if I write one component called a card, then I can repeat it 6 times and I will have 6 cards. What I need to change is only an icon, a title, and a text. I don't need to write all the HTML, CSS 6 times. I only write it once. I just add different titles to it. So these are components. So now you've just learned how to add styling to this text. I'm going to remove this from index, and I'm going to add a container. So a container component is what it is, a container, just like a bootstrap container, that contains the contents to a certain limit, and it adds margins to right and left. So now I have a container. Inside the container, I want to have, let's say, I don't know, a button or a navbar or things like that. Let's say a navbar for now. So I'm going to create a navbar component inside our main folder. I'm going to create a folder called components. Inside that folder, let's create a file called navbar.py. Navbar.py. And here I am going to import Reflex as Rx. And now I'm going to define a function. I can call it whatever. I call it just navbar. And this function is going to return something. What is it going to return? Well, it's going to return rx.flex. So this flex again comes from Chakra. Remember, here we had this flex. So I'm going to, where is it? I'm going to have like a flex box basically, and several items here. I want to have a logo here and menu here. So the logo would be rx.box. So this is just another container. I can put stuff here. So inside that I'm going to have an image. So rx.image, and that image has this attribute of source. Where do I get that image from? Well, I don't have it yet. Inside my assets, you can see only have this favicon. So I want to use this image here, this random image. I want to put it right there. You see that funny image? I'm going to use that one. And since it's inside the assets, I don't need to specify the directory of the assets. I can just say the name, so bear a book.png, and I can specify a width as well as props. Let's say, I don't know, 60 pixels. Okay, that's it for the first element. Then comma, the next box. So rx.box, I'm going to have here menu items. So what I can do, I can use the menu component provided by Reflex. Why not? So rx.menu, and that menu is going to have a menu button so that when you click on it, it opens up. So rx.menu_button, and that button says, I don't know, menu, for example. It's also going to have a list of menu items, so rx.menu_items. And these menu items are going to be several things. So let's say rx.menu, I think menu list or menu items, I don't remember, so I will check. So menu item, the first one, let's say it says about, and another one says rx.menu underscore item. This one says I don't know, posts, for example. Let's save this and let's see if menu items works, or do I get an error? No, I think, okay, apparently it's fine. So now I'm going to use that navbar component inside my index page and also my about page, because I'm going to have that navbar everywhere. So I'm going to use it inside this container, but you can see it doesn't recognize it because it's in another directory. So I should say from dot components, that is the same folder. There is a folder called components. Inside that I have a navbar file .py, but I don't need to mention that. And inside that I want you to import this specific function called navbar. Now it recognizes that. Let's Control S, save this, and let's see what happens. Has not been menu items. Okay, so I was right. Menu items does not exist. I think it would be menu list, maybe. So let's see. Okay, now it works. Look at this. That is so cool. Okay, so we have this, but of course this is a bit off what we have here. We need to use a flexbox to have a space between them. So what I do, right at the end, remember this is all the items of the flex box inside of it, and now we need to add another props to it called justify underscore content, and this is a flexbox CSS kind of stuff. It's going to be space dash between, so it would put a space in between these two items and it would push it all the way to the right, like so. Isn't this amazing? Great. Now the issue is this is a bit higher. Maybe I want it to be at the center. So what I can do, I can add, instead of a box, I can use this center component. So now it should bring it a bit down, and this is on par. Look, great. But these do not go anywhere, these links, because they're not links. So they're just menu items. So what I can do, instead of this menu item, I can have a link component, rx.link, and this link is going to be called about, and where it goes is another props called href, which kind of directs me to the about page. And this posts, what was it called? Actually the about page is this one. So I don't have a posts page yet, so I'm not going to add anything. Okay. So let's just save this one for now, and let's see if I go here and about page. Perfect. So now let's also add the navbar to the about page, but I want to make sure that if someone clicks on the logo, it takes them to the home page. So we are going to add to our logo here. Let's just cut this, all of it, and rx.link, I'm going to create a link, and inside that link I'm going to put the image, and right after the image, inside the link, I'm going to create an href again, which takes me to this. That is a home page, and that's it. Save this. Now I'm going to put this, all of it actually, right here instead of this homepage thing, like that, and save this. And let's see if I go to about, yes, about page, you can see now if I press on this one, it takes me to the home page. All right, so it works. That is great. Okay, now I want to add also a divider in there, something that divides these two. So rx.divider is another component that we can add. I'm going to add it to both of them here. and you will see some very subtle kind of line you can see has been drawn here. Yeah, that's good enough. Now let's create what is it, kind of like a grid here, so that I will have two items here. When the screen is medium size or larger, I'm going to have two sections on one row, and when the screen is smaller, I will have only one column basically. So I'm going to create another component inside our components folder. I'm going to call it header.py. And this header.py, I'm going to import Reflex as Rx again. And let's define this header function. Oops. So this going to return, this time we're going to use rx.responsive_grid. So this responsive grid, you can specify columns in there. So responsive grid, I'm going to use two basically boxes, or let's say two centers, two boxes which are centered, one for introducing myself, one for an image. So rx.center, the first one, center, is going to be rx.box inside that, and rx.box is going to have an rx.heading, rx.heading, which says I'm Vahid, and let's have another one, rx.heading, which says a Python developer, and a button, which says click here, something like that, right? So this is going to be our left box basically, which is centered. Now let's have another one which we're going to center, so rx.center, and this one is going to be an image, rx.image, and that image is going to have this props of source, and bearer book is the same image that we use, and I'm not going to give it any width now. So now we haven't specified how they should be, how many columns there should be. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to use it inside our index page. So I need to import it first. Remember, header is inside the components called header, and let's have some space here, and let's add it right after this divider. And I'm going to save it, Control S, and you should see you can see one on top of each other. There's one column only, and the reason is that it's just, well, mobile first basically, so it goes in one column. But I can specify that I want two columns on medium size or bigger and one column on mobile size. So how do I do that? Right after, that is the last element, so this is basically these two boxes. After that, I'm going to specify another props called columns. It's a list. It says on the smallest screens, go with one column, and the next step would be two, even if it's bigger, again two. If you have several columns, you can say 3, 4, 5. That is on biggest screens, 5 columns, and all the way down. But I just need 2 columns, so I just say 1 and 2. All right, now you can see we have 2 columns because the screen is medium. Now if I inspect that, you can see for mobile, iPhone for example, we have only 1 column here. Perfect. Now about the size of these two, I can change the size to, for example, I don't know, XL for this one. You can change the size of headings just like that. And the next one size, I'm gonna say maybe small. So you will see it should change like so. And maybe I can add a margin top to this button here. So you will see how it is done. Margin underscore Y means top and bottom, but margin top, well, would be just top. So let's say 2 rems, and let's see, and now we can see there is this space there as well. All right, now let's make something with this. When I click on this button here, I want some quote, some random quote appear. How do I do that? Well, I just enjoy this. How do I do that? So let's just create some kind of a quote here. Maybe I can have, I don't know, right inside this header. Yeah, we can have another function. So let's just call it call it quote, for example. And that quote is going to be that quote is going to return a text, and that, well, actually a box. Let's just say a box, and that box is going to have rx.text, which is something like this, quote, and another text which says author, something like that. So I want to have a quote and text, and let's just include it somewhere, maybe inside this header, right under the button, right here, maybe. So that's how you can include also. You see, so we have a quote here and we have the author here. But when I click on this here, I want a quote, a random quote, to be generated in these areas, and the author will generate here. So this brings us to the issue of state. State is basically how or what you currently can do or see. It's like a status quo, the current status of your web page. I have this text here, but I want to change only this text, meaning I want to change the state of this element here. I want to change the state of this component here, from this to some other quote, from this word to another word. So that has to do with controlling or managing the state of your app. How do we do that? How do we change the state of this from this quote to a real quote? Well, we can do it by checking, well, first, I think typey code, no, what was that again? Typist code, quote API, I don't remember honestly. So let's see where it was. Yes, I think I read it on this free code camp. Oh yeah, so here is the address. So I want these quotes to be inserted inside this place. How can I do that? Let's just copy this URL here, and let's go maybe up here, and let's create a state. So for state, we add a class. You can call it whatever. I'm going to call it my state, and this my state is going to inherit from or use from what the state that Rx provides. So in that state, I would say that the quote is going to be a string, and it's going to be just nothing, basically. So, but I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to use, like, I can use that. What is it? Actually, let's just use it like that. A quote is going to be just nothing for now. Instead of this, I'm going to give it nothing. Then I'm going to say there's an author, there's going to be an author, and that author for now is nothing. But I'm going to define a function. That function, let's just call it get underscore quote. That function is going to have self, and if you know object-oriented programming, you know, inside these methods, which are basically functions inside classes, you can refer to the same object as what self. This function is going to grab that URL, get a response from it, get the JSON, and set the author to this author, for example, or this author, and set the quote, which is empty, to a text. So I'm going to define the URL here, which is this. That was the URL. And I'm going to send a request, requests dot get URL. So I'm going to send a request to this URL, and as you can see, I haven't installed request library. So that's what I'm going to do. Pip install requests. And remember to stop the server by pressing Control-C, and then you can do that. So pip install requests. It will be fast, great. And now let's just Reflex run as well. Okay, now up there, let's import requests. Requests, just like that. Yeah. And now I have access to this response that I get after sending a request to this endpoint. But that response is going to have a lot of stuff, like a status code and a lot of other stuff. But what I'm interested in is this JSON. So I would say data or quotes, whatever, is going to be equal to rest.json, this method. Now data is this, is equal to this. Awesome. So my quote, I want my quote to be the first quote here. So I would say self.quote, that is the quote from this state, this one, which is now empty, is going to be data, the first index, which is index 0, and the text key, which is like a dictionary. So this means exactly the first one. I want to do the same, but this time with author. So author, self.author is going to be equal to the first element in the data and the author key. So this is the value now here. Okay, now I have access to these two only. How can I insert them inside my UI application here? So down here, right on this click here button, I'm gonna say upon click, if someone clicks, so on underscore click, when someone clicks, equals, when someone clicks on this, this state should be activated, which is called my state. And this function inside that state, which is get underscore quote, should be activated. You don't need to put those parentheses. So upon click, this should be called. And when it's called, it means I have access to quote and author inside the state. So my state.quote would be the first quote, my state.author would be the first author. So now, inside this text, I can add my state.quote. And instead of author, I can add my state.author. Press save now and let's see what happens. So there's nothing because that is the state, the default state, empty. These two are empty. When I click, you see, this is the quote and this is the author. I can simply add, where is it? This one. I can just add as equals B, just to make this one a bit bold. So now you see it's bold. So whenever I click, the same thing happens. Why? Because I'm constantly sending a request to grab the first element. That is this one. But what I want to do is, I want to choose randomly. Whenever I click some random quote, so I'm going to use the random module from Python, import random. And down below, right here, instead of this 0, I want to have a random number. between 0 and whatever length this data is, whatever quote there is. So I would say random, just say random name, random equals random dot rand range. So give me a random number between the range of 0 and what? The length of data. Whatever length the data has. If it has 20 quotes, okay, between 0 and 20. But not including 20, by the way. So it means from index 0 up to and including index 19, for example. And then instead of this 0, I'm going to put in a random number and save it. Control S, go back and click. Look, another one, another one. Awesome. So now we have this as well. All right, we have covered a lot in this video. Responsive grid, flex, navbar, menu, going to different pages by routing, click events, state, and a lot of styling. Well, I hope you have liked the video, and I will make more videos if you want to. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching and listening.